I'm Carrie Jennings and I'm going to show you how to make feta today. We're going to start with a gallon of milk. This is whole milk. Pour it in the pot. This is a very simple cheese. We'll put it on the stove and heat it up to 80 degrees. So I'll put my thermometer in, stirring occasionally. It doesn't take too much stirring since it's not a very high temperature. So while that's heating, I'll show you what we're going to use as far as equipment and everything. We've got a stainless steel pot and this thermometer. This is technically called a dairy thermometer because it's got the long probe, so it'll sit down in the milk and it'll give accurate readings for the Fahrenheit readings 0 to 220. And I've got a stainless steel spoon that I can stir with and it cleans real easily. And then we'll use a whisk. Once I get to the next ingredient, it's going to be our culture, which is in this little packet in your kit. It's going to be a freeze-dried culture. It's called Aroma B. And we'll use that. I'll just open up the package and sprinkle it in. And this culture will start working with the milk. All the natural enzymes and bacteria and everything in the milk it's going to work with. All right, so it's come to 80 degrees, so I'll take it off the heat. And now we'll add this Aroma B culture directly onto the milk. Sprinkle it in. And I'm going to change and use my whisk so I can get it well incorporated. Now this culture will just work in the warm milk for an hour. We'll just let it sit. We'll just sit it at room temperature and we can stir it occasionally during that hour. So I'll just put a cover over it and set it aside, and then we'll come back in an hour and add the next ingredient. So our next ingredient is the rennet. And the rennet is just an enzyme that's going to continue to work with the milk and the culture that's now in there. And I'm going to break open this little tablet of rennet. And it's scored into 4 pieces, so I can just break it. It's very potent. A little bit goes a long way, because this is what's going to actually turn the liquid milk into solid curd. So I'm going to dissolve it just in cool water. And it's just cool water from the tap. You don't want it to be warm, because that'll start interfering with the working of the rennet. So I'll stir this until the rennet's all dissolved. There'll be little tiny grains left in it, but not a whole lot. There's usually a larger clump here, so I'm going to try to break that up. That looks good. So I'll take my spoon, and this is the milk with the culture, and I'll pour the rennet in. Pour it in quickly and then stir it well so that it goes all throughout the pot of milk. That way the rennet comes into contact with all the milk, and it's going to, see it's liquid right now, and it's going to sit for an hour without disturbing it at all. And that rennet is going to turn those liquid molecules into the solid curd. So we'll have one solid curd when we come back in 1 hour. So I'll cover this and set it aside for the next hour. So now is when it gets exciting with cheese making, because we've left it as a liquid milk in the pot, covered it, set it aside for another hour, and we'll come back and this whole pot is one texture, one solid curd. So I'll show you by placing my hand directly on the curd. You can see I can actually press on that curd. The whole pot kind of jiggles, and the impression of my hand is real faint in there. So that means it's setting up. I'll show you one more thing you can check with to make sure that that curd is firm enough before you go on to the next step. We do what we call a clean break test. So I'll stick my finger directly in the curd, and as I pull it up, it's going to break in a nice clean line. See that clean distinction. Say if I had come back in half an hour and the rennet had not fully coagulated this pot of milk, it would be more like yogurt. I could set my hand on there and I'd have a real creamy layer across my hand. But this has been sitting for the full hour, and that rennet has worked. And sometimes if it's too cool in your house, it will take a little bit longer. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't set up in the 1 hour. Just cover it up again and let it sit a little bit longer, and you'll come back and it'll be this firm texture. So then I'll do what we call cutting it into cubes, like a checkerboard is what it's gonna look like. So I'll take this long metal knife and I'll just slice from top to bottom all the way through the pot, and it's that same texture all the way through. Then I'll go 1/2 inch to the side of that slice, go all the way to the bottom and across. And this I can repeat all the way across the pot. Okay, so we've got the one direction, now we're gonna go the opposite way. And this is where it'll start looking like the checkerboard. We can actually see those curds. The curd is white, and now what's gonna start separating from it is called whey. So now we have 2 separate textures in this one pot. So we've got curds, these white curds, you can see they're the little cubes all across here, and we've got the whey, which is yellow. I'll show you here as I start to stir. So we've got these individual curds that are white, and as I stir more, you'll start to see more of the yellow whey. These curds are gonna start releasing their liquid, and that's when they've released enough liquid, they will be firm enough to go on to the next step. So at this point, the recipe says to stir it to the size of chickpeas. So that's gonna be an average size throughout the pot. Obviously, you'll have some that are very small, like these, and some that are larger, but we'll try to stir it enough that we get kind of an average size of chickpeas. And sometimes your curd will be very soft, and the curds will want to break apart very easily. It's almost like they'll dissolve. So if that's the texture of your curd, just stir even more delicately. You don't want to over stir at this point. That's one of the key points to this cheese, is not to over stir, because you want to keep these 2 distinct textures in here. Now it's easier to see. I've got the white curds and I've got this yellow whey. And if I start losing that yellow whey, if it starts turning white again, that means my curds have dissolved too much into that liquid. So if that happens, just set your spoon down and stop stirring for a little while, and they'll firm up enough that you can come back in a few minutes and stir a little more. So this is an average size of chickpeas, like the recipe says. So that's good for this stage. And then we have that next line in there that says to let it heal or let it sit for 10 minutes. Stir for 10 minutes, heal for 10 minutes, kind of an alternating healing and stirring. And that healing time is basically just letting these individual little curds just rest, and they get firmer as they sit. And so they'll be able to hold up to more stirring the next time it comes around. So that's why the recipe has kind of an alternating stirring and sitting, stirring and healing. So these curds have gotten much firmer. You can see they hold up to a little bit of pressure here, and the curds are ready to drain. So we'll drain it through what we call a cheesecloth. So that came in your kit here. And this is just a simple square yard of cotton, almost like a muslin. You can see how fine of a weave this is. And so this cotton will let the liquid whey drain through, but it'll catch the curds, so we'll keep the cheese in it. And this can be reused over and over again. You'll just wash it with your kitchen towels, put it in the wash, put it in the dryer, and it does great. I've had some for multiple years even, using it for different cheeses all the time, just wash it in between. So I'll set it up over a bowl to catch the liquid, and I'll drain this whole pot in through here. And now we want to hang it so that it can drain. So what I do, since this is a square piece, is I'll take the opposite corners and tie them into a knot. And then I'll take the other two opposite corners, this one and this one, tie them into a knot. And that way it makes kind of a bag that can hang on a hook. Now you may have a different setup at your house for where to hang your cheeses. But this will hang here on my hooks, which I'll move over to. Or if you've got like your kitchen cabinets, maybe they have knobs on the front of them, you can just loop this over the handles on your kitchen cabinets, just somewhere that it can drain into a bowl or pan or something. So you can see it's already releasing a lot of the liquid, and that's going to go into the bowl. So now I'll take it to the hook to drain. All right, so I've got this batch drained. It'll just sit there for about 6 hours or so until it becomes a firm ball. You can see that's much firmer than when we left it to hang. So I'll set this and unwrap it, and we'll see our ball of cheese. Okay, so I can open it up and peel it off of there. So that's a nice slab of cheese, but it's not quite feta yet. We'll go ahead and do the next step, which is slicing it in half. This will give us more surface area to go ahead and put it in a pan and salt it. All right, so just an 8x8 baking dish works very well to salt the cheese. So I'll go ahead and measure out. It's between 3 and 4 tablespoons of this salt. And what that does is pull out the excess moisture so that it gets to be a very dry cheese. Feta is usually very crumbly, so this salt will help it get that way. And I'll go ahead and lift this up so we can get some on the bottom, get the bottom surface. Do the same with the other lump here. I'll do one more. And this will sit out at room temperature. I'll put a cover over it and let it sit at room temperature for 24 hours. And that will pull out a lot of moisture. A lot of times I'll take it and drain off the moisture. It's going to be pulling out more whey as it sits. I'll drain that off about halfway through the sitting process. So after 24 hours, I'll take it and it'll be very firm and dry and crumbly, and we can put it into the fridge right then. It's ready to go. You can crumble it on your salads to eat, or you can put it in a brine, which that recipe's there in your kit for the brine. And as long as this feta is submerged into that liquid brine and kept in the fridge, it'll stay fresh for several weeks. And then it's handy. You can just pull it out and use it for any of your cooking or baking or fresh things that you like the feta for.